friends, welcome to the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast. Today's episode, where it's a business episode, you would have seen this in the title, and it's all about how do you charge or how do you get clients who you can charge $100 an hour plus to. This is, I think, this could be the most practical. This is like a marketing masterclass in a sense with today's guest, Darren Gallagher, who is my business coach and a bit of a marketing guru and somebody who's working with a bunch of different businesses now in the industry. We go, honestly, there's not much we don't talk about. We talk numbers, we talk about the money that we've spent in the past, what we're doing now, all sorts of tactics. We actually talk about, here's a little teaser for you. We say at the end of this podcast, how Silverstone Gardening, my business, is getting about $500,000 to $1 million worth of leads a year without spending a single cent. That's some pretty good information. Took about 10 years to get there, but look, it's possible. But we also talk about how to do paid ads. And look, this podcast, we're as in-depth as we could possibly be without it being a 7-week long podcast. We talk about how to target people, positioning. We talk about plan strategy versus being reactive. Word of mouth. By the way, word of mouth is not a good strategy. You'll hear about that later. Feast and famine, why you should market when you're busy, moving on the bottom 20% of your clients, like communication. And at the end, we weigh up Google My Business, Google Ads, SEO, Facebook, Instagram ads, flyer drops, and we talk about all these different methods. One of the things about this on the internet is a lot of the information you get on the internet, whilst it may be good and helpful, is not targeted to the Australian lawn and garden industry. This is. We've been doing this for about 10 years, so hopefully this is one of the best podcasts for you. If you right now are struggling to get your business to the next level and you want to upgrade your clients, it won't be easy. But this hopefully gives you a bit of a roadmap for that. Without further ado, let's welcome Darren. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast. We have business coach Darren Gallagher with us. He is someone who's worked with me for several years, almost 4 years now. A marketing expert, has done a lot of things throughout his career in business, including running an organization with about 70 or 80 staff members. So this is going to be a really great podcast. We are going to answer the question, how do you get $100 an hour clients? What marketing strategies do you use to get those type of people in your business? I think this is going to be one of the best podcasts that we've done. Darren, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Luke. Lovely to be with you.
So you've been working with me for close to 4 years.
Yeah.
How much money have you had to pay in psychotherapists and hospital visits just for your mental health?
Well, look, we won't disclose that publicly, but we've gone through a few things, and it's been lots of fun and lots of interesting challenges that we've kind of processed through your business. So yeah.
It has been a wild ride. When we started, we didn't realize that I was about to have some major health problems. And I'm very glad that you were there during that. For those who don't know, I have autoimmune disease, which meant that I couldn't work physically in the field for about 2.5 years. I literally went from running an ultra marathon September 1 year to not being able to work at all by November the next year. And Darren was there along the way. And one of the things that we had to do was to rapidly grow the business so that we could employ people and make money. That was the intention anyway, off those employees, so that I didn't have to work out the field. So Darren has been in the industry working with us for a long time. I think we've made just about every, well, not we, but I would say I've made just about every mistake under the sun. And we've also had some pretty good successes. And one of the things is that we have been charging well above $100 an hour for 3+ years. I would say I was charging about $100 an hour before we even met. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to share some of our secrets and help you as a small business owner get your head out of just doing the lawn, get your head out of doing the gardening for an hour or so, and help you with the strategies that you need to take your business to the next level and do the things that perhaps you don't think you can do, which is charging at least $100 an hour for lawn and garden work. How does that sound to you, Darren?
Sounds brilliant. And it pretty much describes the journey we've had these last 4 years. And I think, I've obviously worked within the lawn and gardening industry, but also in other industries. And there's a certain segment of person is starting to wake up to the fact that you can actually charge what you're worth. It's not just about charging more, but it's actually charging what you're worth and have a better life and enjoy the work you're doing. And again, you've gone through a lot of things, and I've seen in your business, but also with other clients that I've got. When they start charging what they're worth, they actually enjoy their work better. And like you said,
100%.
you had to employ other staff and even management to run your business because you weren't physically able, and you managed to do that for quite a few years. So it is possible, and just to give people the confidence, and I would say that's probably the key thing here, is people need to have the confidence that it is possible and that they can do it in their business.
And Darren actually is, so a little plug for Darren. Darren is a business coach. He doesn't have many spots available, but if you are serious about taking your business to the next level in the lawn and garden industry, you're working with maybe like 3, 4, 5 businesses in the industry across the country, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple overseas. That's right.
Yeah, there's actually a cleaning business we talk about a lot over in Ireland, because that's where you're originally from.
Yeah.
And have lived here and over there, alternating for your careers. But a big cleaning business over there doing great work and just different chiropractors and things like that. So not just the lawn industry, but I recommend you a lot because I don't know of anybody else, which might be my ignorance, but I'm not aware of anybody else who works a lot with people who do what we do. And we're not just talking about multi-million-dollar businesses. We're talking about most common people who do this sort of stuff. And you have a really good finger on the pulse. Again, we've been working for close to 4 years doing a lot of different crazy times. So look, that's the plug for Darren. How this podcast is going to go, I'll put an email for him in the notes and things like that so you guys can get there. But how this podcast is going to go, we have 7 different points that we're going to talk through. So there's a little bit of structure to this. Hopefully what we can get to at the end is to help you go from no idea what your business is about, no idea about your strategy, or have any plans whatsoever, the type of person who just throws Facebook ads or Google ads or puts flyers out and hopes for the best, to somebody who you're starting to get an idea of your strategy. And at the end, we're going to give you a little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit of meat about what is better: Google ads, SEO, Facebook, flyer drops, organic social media, things like that. And really try and make this as helpful as possible. We can't go super deep on everything, just time-wise. This would be a 10-hour-long podcast. But hopefully this gives you enough flavor to sort of get your broth cooking. And hopefully we can get Darren back in the future and just plug away at these things one at a time and help you get your business to the next level. All right, Darren. So the first thing that we got to work out with, and there's a few things you got to do before you work out your marketing for those listening. This is the number one mistake. People come and they go, okay, what's the best form of marketing? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? There's about 5 things you got to work out beforehand, because it doesn't matter how good your medium is. Like if you have the best Facebook ad in the world, if you don't understand these things, you will only have limited success, right? But you can get these things right and have an okay ad and you'll really kill it, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing, well, what are the first 2 things, Darren, that you think lawn care businesses need to work out or need to know before we even talk about strategies or anything else?
So first thing is, who am I trying to target? Who am I trying to serve? And so as opposed to, I think when you start out, you just take whoever you can get. And a lot of people stay there. But it's really about defining who's my ideal client. And there's a couple of factors. What service is involved? Who do I like as a business owner to work with? Like, there's certain clients I just like to work with better than others. They personality fit. Now, like I said, when you're starting out, you often don't have that luxury. But I think many of your listeners have had a business for quite a few years, but maybe have still stayed stuck in that mindset of I'll just take anyone. So that's one of the first key ones I think people need to understand.
All right. So you need to know, it's almost like saying, it's like, okay, I want to hit the target, right? I've got a bow and arrow. I want to hit the target. And you're saying, what target are you trying to hit? Right. Because you can choose that before. I find it's a great analogy for this is like like, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there was a guy who about 2 years ago he joined one of these our Facebook groups in the lawn care industry, and his business was called. Again, I'm not trying to name drop anybody or make anybody embarrassed. It's just a great example. Unfortunately, his business was called Mates Rates Gardening or Mates Rates Mowing or Property Services or something like that. It was Mates Rates is what he said in there. And I remember he posted a year and a half ago being like, I've just gotten into the industry, just started my business, very proud of what he was doing. And I remember looking at that going, there's a problem there, because Mates Rates is targeting a certain type of person, which is the person who wants a cheap service. Mm-hmm. And maybe about 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, he posted again saying he was going out of business and he had everything for sale. And so it didn't last very long, and I saw some of his comments online over the time that he was on those groups. He seemed like a nice guy, like nothing wrong with the guy at all. He didn't seem like an idiot or someone who couldn't work out a business. But that's, in a way, without maybe realizing, that is sort of what you're talking about. That is targeting a certain type of person through your marketing, right?
Mm-hmm. And you know what? That in itself is a strategy. But if your costs are way too high, like if you want a mates rate strategy, or let's call it a hyper budget strategy, then maybe you've already made your money and you just like to do it for the lifestyle or something like that. But in terms of, all the costs that you will incur, like there's costs that you will, like they're the floor. You must make a certain amount per hour per week. Otherwise, you will go out of business. So that can be a strategy, but it won't be a strategy for very long or for most people who want to make a serious, proper income in today's current economic climate.
Well, I guess there's a mismatch there if that guy ever wanted to go and do higher end work.
Sure.
Because it doesn't matter how good he is at his job, how knowledgeable he is, how well he trains himself. If he rocked up to a mansion with somebody who wanted amazing hedges and his business card or his sign of his trailer said Mates Rates, he's telling a story. The story is we're cheap. And that comes along with we cut corners, even though he may not cut corners, but it's just for better or for worse, those things are attached. And so sometimes what happens is if you don't stop and think, who am I trying to target? Right? This is an extreme example. If you don't stop and think, who am I trying to target? You may end up inadvertently having a marketing story or a marketing phrase or a way of presenting yourself, which makes you look unattractive to the people you're trying to actually reach. And so if you're trying to reach higher end clients, you need to work that out first before we start any marketing strategies, because it doesn't matter how good your Facebook ads are. If you're trying to reach the top end of the market and your business name is Mates Rates or, pensioner discounts or something like that, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
How defined would you be with your target audience as well? Would you go super granular all the way down to, would you write it down? How would you go about it, Darren?
Well, I think probably one of the best ways is to look already inside your business. There's a principle called the 80-20 principle. And the bottom line is 80% of your income comes from 20% of your clients. And often the 20% your clients are the people who love your business, you like working for them, and they pay you the proper amount. So let's say you've been in business for 1-2 years, you're going to have a client base. So the first thing I would do is take a look at who's my top 20% clients, right? And that inevitably you're going to look at how much per hour per service you're charging. So that's one. So this is probably the quickest, easiest way to get granular, because you can do a lot of theory on this and you can have buyer personas and all that. And I've done all that, and big corporates do that. But I think for small businesses, the quickest way is look inside your business, right? Who are you already serving? Who's the top 20% that you love and and you're charging well for? Because inevitably you're going to be charging different things for different people. Then look at your bottom 20%, so to the other extreme. Look at things like they're always complaining, or they're always take too long to pay, or the backyard's a mess and I always have to move toys, or the dogs are loose, or whatever. And then go, you know what? For a better life, I'm going to try and serve and attract and target those top 20%. And what you find over time, that top 20% just seeps the whole way through your business. You might not get 100%, but by targeting what I call your ideal client, the person you most like serving, and they most like having you service their gardens and their lawns and their as a business, you're going to just find life better. You're going to make more money, and then when times come where you have to put your prices up occasionally or whatever, they're not the type who's going to cry and say, I'm going to get another quote.
So let's talk about, here's an example that you might use for those listening, is you can sit down and write down how frequent is the minimum frequency that you're going to accept, right? So you might not accept once-off jobs anymore, right? You might find that all your once-off jobs are rubbish. Now, you might be doing things where, I'm not saying that once-off jobs are rubbish for every business. I'm just saying, as an example, you might be like, in my area, 90% of the once-off jobs are overgrown rental cleanups. I'm just not accepting them anymore, you know? And you actually that would be a fairly generic sort of target. That's not that specific, but you might just start with that and say, I'm not going to take on once-offs, right? But you can get more specific and go, I'm only going to take people who are fortnightly in the growing season and monthly in winter, period. That's all I'm taking on. And I'm only taking on, let's talk about like getting more and more specific. Well, let's talk about us at Silverstone Gardening. At the moment now, all we do is complete lawn and garden care packages. So we do everything for the client. Or we will take on some once-off jobs that have higher hourly rates. And we sort of open up those doors in winter a little bit more. So we would reject almost all requests in the growing season because we just don't have the time. But in winter, we might do like lawn installations or things like that because they're bigger and we can charge more for them. But that's all we do these days. Big jobs, we basically have $1,000 minimum roughly for once-off jobs or a complete lawn care package. And people who email us, that's the first thing they find out. They email us, hey, look, I'm looking for some lawn mowing service. We'll say, hey, we do that, but we only do that as part of the package. Is that what you're interested in? Right. And over the years, when we started, Darren, we weren't that targeted. We weren't doing things. No. I mean, we don't have too much time to touch on this, but if you're doing a lot of like gutter cleaning or pressure cleaning or handyman services, installing aerials, things like that, which are sort of a gray area, you may find that, that's not a successful long-term strategy for you. It might be good short-term, but that is the other extreme where you sort of open yourself up to almost everything. But we were sort of in the middle when we started, and now we're super defined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a journey to get there, like you said. But you can even start early on. Even if you've only been in business 1 or 2 years, you can take a couple of the things you've just said about targeting and you can implement them. So we're only going to take people who twice monthly or once a month, and that can be your starting point. And the thing about that is you will grow as you get more defined. You actually will realize you serve that market better, and then interestingly enough, you will attract that market much more easier, even without adverts. Because I think one of the things we'll maybe talk about later is word of mouth. People talk about word of mouth being the strategy, and I get a lot of small business across all industries. Almost say with pride, I have no marketing strategy. I just do word of mouth. And the reason they say it is because it's free, but it's actually not a strategy because you can't control it. You can't turn it on. You can't turn it off. And what you end up attracting is, so people you serve, they will send people like them to you. So the question you need to ask yourself is, do you want more of that client? Or do you want more? This is why it's so important to define your ideal client and the kind of work you want to do, because word of mouth will kick in and you will get more of those types of people. So you need to ask yourself, do I actually want more of those types of people?
Right. And that's a lot of that. That's why with the subject of this is how to get $100 an hour jobs, right? If all the people that you are talking to are basically people who can only afford the bare minimum, you might do an amazing job for them and they tell their friends. I wouldn't be that proud of that. I mean, I would be proud that they were happy with the service. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be proud of having that be my life for the next 10 years. You have to have a strategy to be able to reach the millionaires and the the big body corporates with the money and the private schools and the aged care facilities, or whoever it is that you're really looking for, who have, the disposable money to do the stuff that or to make the life and the business that you really want to make.
And also to attract the people who want good lawns, want good gardens, who want, they actually value their lawns and gardens as part of their house or their corporate or whatever, because lots of people don't. So if that's the type of market you want to go after, then, it's important to be able to target those from early on.
Hey everyone, I need a little bit of help from you. Just a small little request. We're in the process of having some conversations with some great brands about sponsoring the podcast. And I need one little thing from you to help with our engagement and to help with boosting a little bit of numbers. Could you please just pause the episode right now and share your favorite podcast episode that we've done with a friend? Just send it to anybody, share it out. Hopefully we get some views. If everyone who's listening to this, and yes, I mean you, if you're listening to this right now, I mean you, could you please pause the podcast, click the share button, send it to someone, spam your friends with it, get the word out there. The more people we get, the more attractive we look to brands. The more attractive we are to brands and the sponsors that we can get, then the more of these episodes we can do. If you don't know this, it's taken me about 8 or 9 hours to do one podcast. And so doing a couple of weeks, it really adds up. So we need that financial support. You can share. Did I mention sharing? Could you please share? Did I say we should share? Anyways, thanks for your support, guys. Let's get back into the podcast. Let's talk about the next thing. So before we do any strategy, the first thing, you've got to know who your target is. So what services are you targeting? What people are you targeting? Who are you actually trying to reach? Because if you just throw something out there into the world, you're not likely to get to be able to build the business you want. The second thing you got to know is, what is your pricing? And a lot of people, tell us about this, Darren, because a lot of people see pricing as something to be embarrassed by and hide away, try and be cheap. But pricing is a really good marketing strategy, right?
Yeah. So like you said about the examples you used earlier, if you have a low pricing strategy, that's probably one of your strongest marketing components, because you will attract people who go, that's great value for money. But if you lock your business into $60 an hour, then and you fill your book up and all this, maybe you've got 1 or 2 staff up with that kind of work, you will really, really struggle to grow, because you won't have space to bring in different types of people at different price points. So you will effectively lock your business in at a much, much lower rate. So pricing also conveys, whether we believe it or not, in a lot of people's minds, quality. People perceive higher price point as higher quality. Now, there is an upper limit to that where it gets crazy, but I think if anything we've seen in the last 10 years, even in the technology industry, and I know that's, but there's some lessons to be learned.
Yes.
And, there's lots of industries that are, I think people are more sensitive to price being an indicator of quality now. So if you're charging too little, then the whole message behind that is you might cut corners, or you're cheap, or you're discount. How good a service are you going to be? Or are you going to turn up on time? Or do you know what I mean? There's a lot of components that people buy. They're not just buying you to cut their lawn. They do you remind them? Is your administration good? And that kind of stuff is really important for people who live busy lives. So pricing is really important. Not that you go crazy, like unrealistic with your pricing, but pricing is a really key component of marketing.
We've got a podcast, so if you guys want to work out what your pricing is, then I've already done a podcast on how to work that out specifically. Go and watch that and work out what your numbers are. Once you've got those two things down, well, I'll make one more point about the pricing thing as well, and using pricing as a weapon in your arsenal of how to get clients. So we had a conversation yesterday. As we say, we only do packages. We got an email from a guy, and you would think on paper that this wouldn't go well. Some people new in business. We got an email from a guy. He said, I want a lawn mowing service. That's all he said, right? We replied saying, all we do is packages. Are you interested in that? He came back and said, yes, can you come tomorrow or the next day, right? We replied, no, we can only do this day on the following week, right? And he was like, well, so what time? And we were like, it'll be around this time. So what we're saying is we are not accommodating you at all, right? If you want lawn mowing, we don't do that. We only do packages. All right. You want the next couple of days? We don't do that. Right. And then when we will rock up when we say we will rock up. Okay. We told him 9:30. I rocked up. Well, 9:30, give or take an hour is what we usually say, but usually 9:30. I rock up 9:40. His wife's there. Right. You think, a lot of people think that's, what's the word? You're being disrespectful to the client, or you're putting them off, or whatever. We're not doing that. What we're actually doing is we're really busy. We're full. We would love to serve you, but we can only serve you on our terms, right? And if we say we're going to be there, we're going to be there when we're going to be there, and we're going to do a good job. So I rock up. The ute's neat. The ute's tidy. We rock up on time. Have a conversation with the client, right? They accept our second highest package, right? And they've got a pretty big lawn for the area. It's like, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a lot of money. And this lady at the end of it is just so thankful for us because it is exactly the service she was looking for, right? I would say most people we have that conversation with, they don't go for us because they say, hey, we want mowing. And we're like, oh, all we do is packages. They go, oh, okay, no worries. That's just not what I'm looking for. But for the people who it is what they're looking for, then by putting them off, and like it's not like we put them off when we could have been there the next day, but we just couldn't. We're just like, we're busy. We're sending a message. We're busy. We're exclusive. We are expensive, and we can only fit you in at certain times. It's like when you order a Ferrari, right? Not anybody can just go and buy a Ferrari, especially their limited ones. They actually invite billionaires and rich people to buy their car, right? And that's why they sell it so quickly, because it's exclusive and it's sending a message that we are high quality. It's like sometimes when you bend over backwards for somebody and then give them a cheap price, it sends across this message of being really, really desperate. And that does not inspire confidence. And you might be out there, you might have, let's say you quoted this lady, even if you're on the other side of the country, it's just a hypothetical. Let's say you quoted her and they said lawn mowing, and you said, yes, I can do lawn mowing. And they said, can you get here tomorrow? And I'll reschedule something and I'll be there. And then you rock up and you give them a cheap price. They would still go with us because you have sent a message through your pricing and the way that you, the type of work that you do, that I'm desperate for work and I really need the money. And that inspires no confidence that you're going to be able to do a high quality job, irrespective of how good you actually are. It's just the way you've presented yourself,
Yeah. And that's happened a lot. I think there's a lot of points you've hit there, but desperation is never a great. It's never a great thing when you're selling or you're positioning yourself, because people pick that up. And like you said, a number of things you've said in that example is you're communicating all the time through the way you accommodate people, through what your message is, through your. I mean, that person was on your website. They saw what you'd put together. So you've crafted a story. You've crafted a position, and again, you've been working on that quite a while, but you're defined. And then what happens is you actually attract what you call your ideal client. That is who you're looking for, because that's who you strategically decided you wanted to serve, because you know you can serve them at a better level.
All right, let's talk about strategy now, because that's a really good segue into it. You're talking about having a lack of confidence is never good. You don't see a lot of people who actually have a defined strategy, though, and I think that leads to a lack of confidence. So what they're usually doing is they don't sit down and spend time, and maybe they do like once a year or something like that, but it needs to be a little bit more regular than that. But they very rarely sort of stick their head up out of their work, out of the mowing and out of the answering phone calls and answering emails, and think, where do I actually want to go? And how am I going to get there? So now we've talked about where do you want to go pricing wise and clients. What sort of strategies are we going to use to get there? What sort of stuff that you commonly see that people are doing that they're doing wrong?
Having no goals at all. So literally week to week, take what they can get. So no planning, no goals, not aiming towards anything. The thing is, if you aim at nothing, you always hit it. So there's a lot of businesses are operating in that space. And so just even taking, even if you said, I'm going to make 3 goals for the next year, and just keep them simple, and then here's the second bit of that: consistently sticking to them, right? No strategy is any good if you just do one-off time. No ad campaign will work. No marketing strategy works if you just do a one-off or do it for a week or even a month. So the consistency, the key thing is knowing, okay, what kind of business do I want? We've talked about who do I want to serve, what kind of services.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everyone listening to this knows what they're good at. They know they know that they're good at what they do, right? And if they don't, then that's maybe something to work on. But if you know what you're good at, then start making some goals around that. I will focus more on these services. And like, even if you said, I'm going to focus on these 5 services in my business, and I'm going to charge this minimum rate for every new person I quote, right? So that's a good starting point for a strategy. And you just stick to that.
And so then that's your starting point. I would say that a lot of people might go, okay, I've done something like that. It's still not working. The next step, I would say, or people have never done that, you need to start that. The next step with a strategy, though, and we touched on this before, is how are you actually going to reach your market? And a lot of people would say, well, it's word of mouth. Word of mouth is a fantastic way to get a job. It's a fantastic way to get a single client, or one client at a time. It is a terrible strategy when it comes to a tangible thing that's going to improve your business. Because we talked about before, not only is it going to just attract the type of people you're already serving, which is great if you're already where you are, but if you're already already where you want to be, but if you're already where you want to be, you're not listening to this podcast, right? You've got no interest. You're listening because you want to improve your business, right? So that's the first problem. But the second problem with word of mouth is it's not measurable, and it's not something that you can open or shut the tap off on. And so you may get to a point where you really need some work. There's no formula you can put on your laptop which increases your word of mouth, right? You might be able to ask your clients to share it around, but you're not guaranteed they're even going to do it. And even if they do, none of their friends may even need it. It's a more organic thing. It's fantastic to have word of mouth clients come in, but you need something a bit more robust, a bit more planned, a bit more thought out and thorough that includes, I guess, advertising and marketing techniques that go beyond just word of mouth, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, when we were planning this, or when I was thinking about this morning, I was thinking, as a complete strategy, if I was starting out, or I was getting going, or I wanted to change direction, what are the key things that I would do in my lawn care business? And I just wrote down a couple of things, and these are simple, and so this is actually a complete strategy in itself. First thing I would do is I would go and I would get my Google My Business listing up to speed, right? Because I'll tell you what, just recently talking to a number of clients, I've done some research on Google listings now. The number of people who, for the term lawn mowing in a certain area, there's next to no competition, right?
Yeah.
So even if you got your Google My Business listing, assuming you're not in a hyper competitive area, you will get people finding you. And what I mean by that, get that up to speed, get some photographs on there, get all your information right, get some reviews, right? And again, looking at a lot of research, most people have 6, 7, 8 reviews and they stop. You get above 10 or 20 reviews, you're going to go to the top of that. So you're going to organically already catch people looking for your business. So that's even without a website. But the next thing I would do, I would just have a simple website, like a simple one, not something that you pay $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. Just get a simple website with some lead capture form prominent on that. And within that lead capture form, ask for more than name, address, and service type. Ask a couple of telling questions that are linked to what we said earlier about who's my target market. Some little questions that are going to call them out, right? So that's 2 things, simple things. Even a simple website could be free. So I'm just talking about either really low cost or free ideas to put together as a strategy. These are tactics, but put them together as a strategy. Then the next thing I would do is just get my social media up to speed. And don't have posts that are 1, 2 years old, and that's your last post. So just post once a week, right? Just post once a week and keep it just informative and friendly. And then two more things. And so this is just a packaging together, something, again, most of that's free. But what I would do is my existing clients, I would just email them once a month, right?
Yes.
Not like a newsletter as such, but just an email with, here's tip of the month, or here's what you should be doing this season. And that just keeps you top of mind, right? Oh yeah, I know that he comes in or she comes and cuts my lawn or does my gardens, but just have that. People say, well, people don't read emails anymore. That's actually not true. If you're relevant and you're interesting and they know you, it just adds to that higher touch. And then the last thing I would do, okay, it was because it's easier to get business from the existing clients that you already have. The hardest person to get is a new client in terms of cost and effort, and they need to know, is it going to work for me? Are they going to do a good job? Your existing clients are already the best people to get new business out of. So I would be looking at additional services, right? And not like, oh, I'm a salesperson, I'm just going to try and get more money out of people. No, I want their lawns to be better. So I'm going to offer them services in the right season at the right time that are going to help their lawns or their gardens be better. So just offering those. The number of people who don't even do that is huge. So just those couple of things, I think 5 things I've just described, that in itself will take you beyond most what other lawn care businesses are doing in Australia right now.
I would just add one thing, Darren, is that people, you have to continue it. For it to be a strategy, it has to be consistent. And so that's something that we've talked about before. So what I would do, we use software now I don't do this because I'm doing more things than just this, but if I was solo again and I was running my own business, I would book in jobs into my software system that were marketing jobs, right? And so I would be like, say on the 1st of every month, I'm booking in, today is the day that I send an email to everyone. And you can get ChatGPT to write these things now. There's no more excuse for this stuff. Just say, let's say it's the 31st of May. This will be released on the 1st of June. So it's the 1st of June when this is coming out. So you have an opportunity to say, hey, it's June. This is a great time to put your mulch down. June, July, August, great time to put your mulch down because it's down before the hot weather comes. Last thing you want to do is already have your plants scorched, chuck your mulch down. That's all you need. And say, hey, if you're interested, I can do a quote. And what would be really good is if you could even give a little bit of a ballpark figure, which obviously is difficult for different people, but you could be like, hey, it costs roughly, X amount for 10 square meters of garden bed to have this done, give or take a bit, right? And you don't even have to be that specific because the clients who are too cheap, they just look away from it. But there'll be a bunch of clients who go, oh, that's within my budget, let's do it. And you get you out for a real quote. A simple email like that once a month, or you set your recommendation, a reminder in to ask people to recommend you, or you set your reminder in to ask people to put a review up. The strategy, that is actually what we're calling a strategy. It's just, okay, here are my 5 avenues, and I've set down regular things. Hey, you know how early in the episode I asked you to share the podcast? Well, you didn't share it, did you? Look, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. So, look, here's another opportunity then to share it. You can do that right now. Yeah. Just talk about sharing it and how that would help us out. Anyways, if you did share it, then we could be friends. Thank you very much. Anyways, look, I'm just having a laugh. We will eventually have these proper ads here. People who are really helpful. But we're waiting for the right people to come along. In the meantime, you could just share it. Anyways, sorry, I'll stop spamming you. Let's get back into the podcast. What I see happening so much, and I would say this is 90-something% of the market, is we come into spring and they are insanely busy. Super, super busy. Mentally, you get quite overwhelmed sometimes with all the requests coming through, all the phone calls. It gets too much. So you stop marketing. Massive mistake. Massive, massive mistake. We'll talk about it in a second. You then, you're off. You're taking all the work because you make hay while the sun shines. So you're taking all the jobs. Again, another mistake. You work really, really hard. Often you get to sort of the end of summer and look, you've worked yourself to the bone. good on you. You're doing a great job of everything. You need a bit of a break. So you sort of slow things down. And all of a sudden, autumn's quite nice because usually that's a fairly steady period. And then winter comes and you start freaking out because you don't have any work. So that's when you start advertising, which is why this podcast is probably going to be really helpful for people, because a lot of people are going, I don't have any work. I need help. So look, you can start in winter, don't get me wrong. But then what happens is people then massively invest into marketing. They chuck all their ads up and everything, but they don't have any backbone to them because they need the work. And so their pricing is low. They get into some agreements with people that maybe they wouldn't have priced it that way if it was November or October.
Yep.
Spring comes around again, and because they've signed up with all these new agreements, again, they are flat out. So they take their foot off the accelerator, don't advertise anymore. Same thing happens every single year. And what you end up finding is you might get some good word of mouth, you might get some things through here and there, but the problem is you just don't get any better. And that's a lot of people's stories. They're still serving the same type of clients. They're still having the same similar hourly rate. And that's because they're so busy and they're making some pretty simple mistakes. We've all made them. This is not a judgment on anybody. I've made them. This is why we're talking this podcast. But they never get out of that rut. That's probably something that you see a lot of, and there's some other things that people get stuck in as well that you see as well, Darren, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's the hamster wheel effect. And, for a lot of people, it's easier just to keep doing the same thing, even though you're not getting decent results. That's just a mindset thing.
Yeah.
To actually shift that is quite difficult. I guess that's why people are listening to this kind of podcast and are on different groups to see what is possible. But like you said, people get stuck in those. I mean, I think you've just described it really well. That's the full season, and then they go into the next season. And instead of going, I guess you're doing that because you don't have a strategy, you don't have a plan. By stepping back and having a plan, going, no, it's okay. I know winter's coming. I've already planned for that. I already know.
Yes.
Because this is what we've been consistently doing. I know is seasonality to this industry, but you've got to plan for that not just by taking what you can get. Because and the other thing with what you've just described is you never build confidence to do something different.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And I think, to be quite honest, I think that's one of the game changers, the things that are holding people back. You never develop the confidence. Look, I've seen you in your business over these 3 or 4 years. You've been willing to experiment and try and test, right? And you've done a lot of learning on the side. That's the other thing I see. I think if you want to make some changes, you need to really invest in yourself, in the business area, in marketing stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I've seen you do that. You would often come to me and go, we're going to try this strategy. And we would talk about it and we would bounce it around and then define it. But I've seen you grow in confidence because you had a plan. You tested, this worked, that didn't work. Let's tweak that. Let's iterate now differently. So next season or next month or whatever it is, we know you've got a lot more confidence because you've gone through that process.
The confidence is key. And this is what I was going to say. Some people would have been shocked when they heard me say not marketing when you're busy is a massive mistake, because people think you only market to get work. And if you've got work, you don't need to do any marketing. That is so one-dimensional. There's 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions to this, One of the things that marketing does is it gives you that confidence and it gives you steel in your spine. So we've talked about this before in the podcast, but the systems that we've worked on, Darren and I have worked on at Silverstone Gardening, have resulted in us getting a lot of requests for jobs that we no longer service. So what that means is when people contact us, right, I've said it before, but it's something around 10 to 8 requests a week, and we're in winter, we're turning away. It's probably going to be double that, maybe triple that in spring. We just turn away. And it's just, we're not rude or disrespectful. It's just we can't help you with that, And so what that means is we can charge whatever price we want, right? I mean, within reason. We're not being, we're not ripping people off, but we've worked out what we need to charge, and we have no problem in charging that because we know if you don't accept it, The next person might. The next person might. We have enough people coming through the door that I'm not basing my, whether or not I'm eating dinner this week or not, or whether or not I'm paying my insurance this month or not, is not based on whether or not you accept this quote. And that's why how you break the cycle that we talked about there, you start with the strategy, like something Darren said, and that doesn't mean that you need to do exactly what Darren said. That's just an idea of a strategy. You set your minders in, you've set aside time to do that as part of your job, like you would mowing people's lawns. And when you get busy, instead of seeing marketing as a way of getting more jobs, this is now the way of getting better jobs.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so what you do, Darren talked about getting rid of the bottom 20%. That's when you get rid of your rubbish clients. And that's when you start improving your business. So what you will find is if you keep marketing when you're busy, when somebody calls, if you've got a couple of years experience, you will know 80% of the time if they're good or bad just by talking to them on the phone, right? Sometimes you'll get surprised, like the example I showed earlier today. But you will know, and you will be able to see from their request, hey, look, that's just not the right type of work for us. Or it is. You dedicate yourself to the great clients. And what you find is when you're getting too busy, you drop the ones that you don't want to work for anymore. And you might get to the end of summer, and all of a sudden you have 20% better clients. And do you know what those better clients do, Darren? They accept recommendations over winter.
Right.
And it's like, you don't know how much that changes a business. You guys listening to this right now, if you're struggling this winter, you do not know how much this will change your business coming to next winter. If all you're serving is cheapskates at the moment, or 80% of your market is that, right? You go from 80% to 40%, and you got 60% of pretty good clients. I'm not saying amazing clients. You probably couldn't do that in 1 year. But maybe half of those clients, of those good ones you have now, so that half of the 60% of your good clients, which would be 30% of your total clients, may accept a couple of $100 of recommendations, right? That's probably worth maybe $1,000 for a few of them. That's probably worth $10,000 over winter, right? If you got 30 clients that accept $300 each, that's $10,000, isn't it? It is. That's $9,000. So 30 clients that accept one mulching job. That's the sort of stuff, that I'm talking about. That it's amazing. You keep your marketing all year round. And what you find is instead of being afraid of the phone, you can take the phone on. And look, I understand that you get super busy with the phone. We can talk about strategies to deal with that in a different podcast. But like, it is such an underrated part of marketing on how well it can improve your client list, not just help you get work through winter.
Yeah.
Are you talking with a lot of people about what are the problems when so I know you're talking with a lot of people about improving their client lists. What are some of the challenges that you're finding, and the pushback or the fear that you're finding when you're working with people? Because there'll be people listening to this right now who might think, I get it's a good idea, Luke, but I don't know about that for me. What sort of things are you seeing with the people you're working with?
I think there's, again, everyone's individual in this, but there's a couple of key things. I think, going back to what we said earlier about price and your pricing being a key marketing strategy.
Yep.
Like, you could take 10%, because you can test this. And I think, testing is so critical in marketing. You could take 10% of your market and increase the pricing. And then that doesn't affect your entire thing. And again, I've got clients who've done that and getting, like, sometimes 100% of people just take their price, or maybe they lose 3% or whatever. But the amount that you're going to raise your price with means it's negligible. You've done that. Look, we've talked. You've done that many times, and you might have had 5% drop off that activity. So just take 10%, right? So people are doing this. People I'm working with are doing this. And they're saying, actually, maybe 100% of people take their new price. The confidence goes, then they take another 10%, or maybe let's go to 30%. So you can do it that way. The other thing I would say to do as well is, like, what are we today? Was it Wednesday or Thursday when this comes out?
It'll be Thursday when it comes off.
Yeah. See, the very next quote you get, right? Someone rings through. Just charge like test it, charge a quote, I don't know, 10% higher, 20%, whatever you think. Start experimenting, right? And in that, you're doing real market research in your area, right? You need to at least suspend the fear for a minute, right? If you're like, oh, I need to take this client, suspend it for, let's say, the next 5 clients, right? And just go, I'm gonna add 20% to every one of my jobs that I'm gonna quote for the next 5 clients, and see what happens.
Yeah.
So that,
and I think most people, I mean, there's 2 things that are going to happen. Either that you're going to be surprised that people accept it. If people don't accept it though, and you're not making money at the rate that you're currently at, like let's say you need to raise your price to be profitable. So it's like your current, it's not that you already are profitable and you're pushing the boundaries, because that might just tell you that, okay, you're pushing the boundaries.
Right.
But let's say you're charging $60 an hour and you try to raise it to 80, or you try to raise it to, even less, $70 an hour, and people don't accept your price rise. There needs to be a moment of humility there and go, I must be doing something wrong.
Right.
I mustn't. And people, you need people in your life who are going to tell you where you're being an idiot. Otherwise, you're never going to realize. And the only thing worse than being an idiot is being an idiot and not knowing you are the idiot. Right. And I'm saying that from a place of like, I guess, love and care for you listening to this right now. That if you've raised your prices in the past and you're still below what a lot of people are saying you should be, like you've done the calculations and you're still not hitting that, that's telling you need to improve something. But I would say the vast majority of people are actually going to be able to get away with much more than what they are currently charging, because of some of those fundamental things: being scared when they're going to quote, having to win the job, all that sort of stuff. And these things compile on each other. Like I said, like you start, you're hungry because it's winter and you need the money. And so you just take on the job, and then all of a sudden, it's underpriced and they tell their friends. And so you're trying to struggle with their friends because they have a pricing expectation from that bad word of mouth now. And it snowballs sometimes. And so, I can totally understand how some people will be listening to this going, I know it makes sense. I still am scared. I'm still worried. I don't see that, And the other thing as well, it can be hard to do that when you have really bigger jobs, right? Because there's a bit of, if it's a bigger number, it's harder to move on from that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess
the other thing, just to say on that, Luke, is I've seen people who have, I won't call it raising your prices. I call it charging what you're worth. Okay. I want to use, because I think that's a different mindset. Yes. I've seen people who've gone out and charged what they're worth, and you see their attitude when they go to that job, completely different. I mean, you've done it. You've been there. You see when you're driving to that job, knowing that there is the profit margin built in or whatever, and you go, and then that actually creates a new cycle for you. You go, actually, you know what? That felt great. And it actually helps you improve the job you do, right? Because you, in a sense, you're charging what you're worth or higher rates. So you hold yourself, in a sense, to a higher standard. And it actually takes you into a new mindset of excellence and quality and serving people better. It's not about ripping people off. It's about serving them better.
Yes.
And so that actually, I've seen it happen to, anyone who's done that, I've seen it happen to them.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, because some people think I'm only a gardener. And so they don't see that they actually are worth $100 an hour. And so they end up going, okay, well, gardeners are only worth 60, right? Who said that? Right? Like, what authority said that? Did the Lord speak from on high and declare through 1,000 angels that that's what gardeners should charge? It's like, that's not, gardeners. And the other thing is, like, what is a gardener? Because, some people, all they do is shovel some mulch and sit on a ride on lawnmower. They don't care about the detail. There's no problem solving, no improvement of, you get what I mean, very basic level. And then some people are incredibly knowledgeable, doing very high level work. They're not worth the same thing. So have that confidence. I'll tell a story about a massive contract we moved on last year, because I think people will go, oh, well, it's nice for you to say this sort of abstract, ethereal stuff, Luke, but you don't know what it's like. So last year, we were having some problems, and we have problems all the time because we're a business just like everybody else. And we had a contract. Now, this was a 6-figure contract, a very nice looking retirement village with over, well, it was very close to 200 houses plus common areas. You know, it was a massive facility. And we weren't charging an hourly rate because we've got to get into that too as well. We were charging a fixed price. We will do all the gardening for this many $1,000 once every 5 weeks or whatever it was. And what happened was there was one single gray area in the contract. And that gray area in the contract was that we would spray most of the weeds and manually remove the larger weeds. Big problem at, with communities and things like that, because how do you define larger weeds, right? I think most gardeners would probably agree that a larger weed is something that's actually large. A lot of old people find, as I found out, that very small weeds in their mind are considered quite large. Made a huge problem with the contract. Now, we had people on the board who understood where we were coming from. We had people who didn't understand where we were coming from, and it made it a very difficult contract and a very hard place to work at. And what we ended up doing, to have a long story short, we were charging the equivalent when we were there of about $90 an hour, which we could afford because it was all man hours. We weren't running machines. There was no travel time between jobs. We were there for a long time. So as a commercial job, very high hourly rate for what our competitors were charging. And we know that other quotes were coming in at $55 now for some of the bigger companies. They accepted us. We could have kept that job if we had kept the price and kept the thing. But the problem was that we kept getting complaints and misunderstandings. And we said to them, we will take out that clause about removing the bigger weeds to make it very clear as to what it is, right? And it will be, spraying basically only and removing weeds at our discretion. Or you can pay us $30,000 more a year and we will do the work to the standard that these couple of whingers want, right? And they were like, well, we don't want to lower the standard and to meet the actual quote, and we don't want to spend $30,000 more. And we said, no worries, then you need to find somebody else. And we could have capitulated. We had a strategy, and our strategy was to move into more lawn renovation work. Our lawn renovation work, we're doing at a minimum of like $120, $150 an hour, so much higher hourly rate. We lost that contract in September, so 6 figures. By Christmas, we had done more work in lawn renovations in money at a higher hourly rate, and we would have had to reject most of that because we weren't able to find the staff we needed. If we had kept on that contract, we would have had some staff who would have been quite burnt out by all the complaints and the challenges of, those misunderstandings, and we wouldn't have made as much money. And so you can get in these positions where you get sucked in by the big dollars. You're worried about losing massive contracts, and you've got to take the ballsy move. And it was stressful at the time, right? Darren and I, we talked through it a lot. And it was like, is this the right thing to do? And we had a few other things going on as well that really complicated it, like people who were injured and how much, how do you grow a business if you're not confident in somebody being able to actually work? And how do you hire people in the hardest market to hire people in 40-something years? We were having all those challenges at the same time. And it's not something that we're just saying from, the roof, from the nice, penthouse mansion up the top, where we don't have any struggles. This is real world. You have to make those ballsy moves to be able to open up space for those higher hourly rate clients. It doesn't matter how good your marketing is if you can't accept anybody because you've got a $50,000 contract at $60 an hour, whatever it is, you're going to be in a tough spot. Friends, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has been sharing this podcast. It is actually making such a difference. You may not believe that because I know people are sharing things and you might get 4 or 5 likes or you might get a couple of people who comment. But do you know what? There's a lot of people who've been seeing those posts. Our growth off the charts. We're growing 15, 20, 25% each week. Thank you so much for that. I've been getting we've had some great conversations with some great brands. I can't reveal too much because we haven't signed anything yet. We're aiming for the start of the financial year. But I just want to say what you guys have been doing is making a difference. Thank you so much. I hope these episodes are giving you so much value. Like we said before, it's a lot of time, so we need the support. And I just want to thank you for the support because it really is making a difference. We've had some big brands contact us saying we want to get involved. That's amazing. And we're not talking about rip-off stuff that isn't relevant to what you do. We're talking about things that actually can really help your business. Great brands to work with. Anyways, thank you so much for your support. Keep it going. You probably won't see any ads on this yet until July. I'm looking forward to having some reimbursement for all this effort, and I'm sure you will be too, because if you're enjoying the podcast, that's what's going to keep it going. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get back in the podcast. All right, so Darren, let's just recap a little bit because we've talked about so many things. So let's bring it back into some bullet points for people. Let's talk about because we're about to go into what you guys came here for, how to actually get $100 an hour clients. But here's the foundational work, which is a lot of the tough stuff you need to do. First, who are you actually trying to serve? What services are you trying to do? Second, what is your pricing? Right? And having that worked out before you get to the job, being immovable on that so you're not negotiating and having the confidence to follow through with that. The next thing is working out a plan and a strategy and being consistent with that. The next thing is marketing when you're busy so that it helps you raise your hourly rate. And then the last thing there that we do is when you get good clients, you need to move your bottom clients. And sometimes you have to move your bottom clients first to allow space for new ones to actually come in. And so those are the foundational things you need to do first. You can't, sometimes you can, but it's very difficult just to go out there and start going from $60 an hour to $120 an hour overnight. Sometimes it can be done, but it can be difficult. So I'm going to tell you a secret superpower that we use, and then Darren is going to talk through the differences between the different marketing methods for getting the results. So here's my secret superpower. Nice and quickly, focus on your 1%ers. A lot of you, if you were to come up and do a job with me, let's say we're using the same sort of equipment, so this is just doing a normal lawn mowing job. I don't think, if you've been in the industry for a while, I don't think I could do much better than you or you could do much better than me. It gets to a point where you're very experienced and the gardening job is the gardening job. The equipment you use is very similar. I think you guys get that. It's the 1%ers. Did you whip a couple of weeds growing in the driveway? When you rocked up, did you smell nice? Did you have a good smile on your face? Did you have a nice clean ute, right? Or did you rock up on time? Did you do all those little things? When did you send out a reminder? Did you keep forgetting and rescheduling? These 1%ers are how you distinguish yourself from the competition, right? And it's something that's really worth focusing on. The secret superpower that we use is we break our service down into every single point of contact, no conflict with our clients, every bit of contact we have with our clients. And we say, how can we be the best at that? And what you find is over the last close to 3,000 people who have worked with Silverstone Gardening, all of them have been charged more than $100 an hour. And our ratings from our clients through the roof. People are really happy with the service, and it's the 1%ers that make that difference. So, Darren, let's actually talk about marketing things. What would you say, other than what you used before, was a really good example of cheaper or free even services? How do you rate and how do you think about going through Google Ads, SEO, Facebook, paying for social media, flyer drops? How can we help the people use those methods to get their hourly rate up?
Okay, it's a good question. It's a big question. And so we're kind of moving more into paid, more targeted methods or mediums. So we've obviously in Silverstone Gardening, you've done a lot of Google ads. You've run them. You've over many years. The thing about paid advertising, whether it's, let's say, Facebook or Google, just doesn't really matter. I mean, the two are slightly different, but we'll talk about it in a second, is you get immediate results, right? You can put an
Yes.
ad up and you can target someone and you get immediate results.
Yeah.
If, for example, this is why I say having a website is not a strategy. That's like having a page out in your street. Does anyone see it? You know, having a flyer out in the street. Does anyone see it? So what do you do with your website? So with Google Ads, you generate leads straight away. You can. There's a lot of skill in terms of getting the right return on investment. How much do those leads charge? Which comes back to everything we've been saying about if you're not charging the right level, you're not gonna pay $30 for a Google lead if you only charge $60 for a first job. Same with Facebook ads, which brings me on to another concept: is what's the lifetime value of your client that you're trying to get, right? So that's a critical, important marketing concept. So you don't do an ad to get one client for one service. You do ads to get a client who's ideal, who loves what you do, and will stick with you. And then over the lifetime of that, let's just say you pay $30 to get a Google ad. But they might stay with you for 2 years, and that might be worth $3,000 or $5,000. So your $30 Google ad netted you $3,000 in business. But again, it's having a strategy in place, knowing how to do that, knowing how to track that, how to monitor that. Is built on everything we've just said. So Google ads, Facebook ads, straight away you can get results, and you can start to measure and experiment.
Yes.
I'll just say to anyone who's going to do anything, if you're going to do it yourself or with a little bit of help, you will be experimenting. Okay.
Yes.
It just is the nature of it, because you don't know how many other people are, because it's an auction, you don't know how many other people are competing against you at any given season. I've had Google Ads campaigns that are getting really cheap leads. Suddenly another player comes in the market and your lead value cost doubles. Nothing you can do about it. You just have to be a little bit smarter. So so running Google Ads yourself can be challenging because using the platforms or Facebook platforms is quite difficult to navigate. But the other alternative is getting the third-party company to do that for you. That can actually be quite expensive. So it isn't an easy option to go ahead and implement. For starting, say, with Facebook.
It takes a lot of time. And that's the other thing as well. If we stay on Google for a moment, so we had a year, let's pull back a curtain a little bit and open up some figures for people, right? What were we paying? Because we had a year that we really used Google Ads, and we're probably talking about, it was tens of thousands of dollars for the year. I should have got these numbers up exactly, but I think it was about $50,000 that we spent that year on Google Ads. So about $1,000 a week that we were spending. And we got about 2,000 or so new people calling up. You would call them leads, about 1,600 of them got to the point where we actually added them to our system. And so that's about $25 a lead from memory. Right. It was I think it was $23 or something like that, wasn't it? So it might have been like 48,000 or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the numbers were. But when you're going out there, that's not $23 per job. That's $23 per lead. And then how many of those people are you actually closing? So the way that Google Ads works is you're bidding, saying for the top spot or for a click on the Google searches. You might pay $3 a click, but only one out of every so many actually go onto your webpage. And so now you can go much cheaper than that and you can hone it in, but it's hard to go cheaper and have the scale that we were going at. But we had worked out our own maths that we were totally fine with paying that money because of the lifetime value of the client. So if we were winning, let's say, 1 out of every 3 clients to be regulars, which is probably what we were doing at the time, then it was about $75 for a regular client, but a regular client's probably worth $1,000, right? So you can work out some rough numbers on that. Now, there were a lot of problems with how we did that from a business structure, because it was a huge amount of administration burden, and which is why we didn't repeat it the next year. But the marketing itself was very successful and definitely something that can be used, like you said, to instantly scale. Whereas when you use something like Google My Business, which is free, you don't get that ability just to turn it up or to turn it down or to do that sort of stuff. So there's a value to both. And if you're thinking about getting into Google Ads, you might be paying $3 to $5 a click, and not all those clicks will even end up in a contact, and not all those contacts will even end up in a job. So that's because there's some, I mean, that's basic to us, but there's some people listening to this, they've never heard about how you even do that before, So what's Facebook ads like? How would that differ, and where's it better and where's it worse than Google ads?
So the mechanisms are fairly similar in that it's an auction and you put an ad up and you pay per click or per impressions, and you can target your geographical area around where you want to target. So that's all very similar. I would say at this point they're cheaper clicks. Now the big difference is when someone is typing a search item into Google, so they're intently looking for it. Whereas with Facebook, they're scrolling through their social feed and you're interrupting them. So it's psychologically, it's a completely different market, which is essentially why a Google ad click and lead will be more expensive. They're looking for someone in your area, and their ads only show if they're in that area, so it's hyper targeted. Whereas Facebook is they're scrolling, you're interrupting them. So they're in a different headspace, and you'll get a different type of client as well.
Yes, you definitely do. The downside of Google is, and other places like Gumtree, for example, where people advertise on Google is better than Gumtree for those who've used Gumtree. But the problem with them is that a lot of people, the disorganized client who hasn't worked things out, they Google you find you on Google, and they want it done tomorrow. You can find often that with Facebook ads, not necessarily Facebook groups or posting free to Facebook groups, but on Facebook ads, they're not quite in a rush. It's just they're scrolling and they go, oh, okay, well, we sort of need the job done. Oh, look, there's a gardening business. I was going to organize that sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'll call them now. So there are downsides. It's not, there's no, let me get this straight out. There's no medium that will immediately, by medium, I mean sort of Facebook, Google, Instagram, flyers, that will immediately get you only great clients. You will always be dealing with filtering clients through, which is why you need to have that target. That's why that's the first thing we talked about, because you can just put ads out and just go, I only get rubbish people coming through. It doesn't work. It's like, well, to be honest, maybe that's all we would get too. But because we filter and we have our pricing right, we have our confidence right, and our strategy is long term, and we market when we're busy and we move on our lowest clients. It's like those things do add up to help you do that other stuff. But so back to the Facebook thing that you're saying before I start telling the story is you're saying Facebook is a bit different. It's a bit cheaper at the moment, but you're not getting necessarily people who need the work done right now. So it's a little bit slower growth. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, you need to work with them a little bit in terms of turning them into a client, because you've interrupted them, right?
Yep.
They're not searching for you. But that again underlines the critical nature of needing to filter. If you use paid adverts and you don't do any filtering, when I say filtering, I'm talking about like on Facebook ads, you can also do a lead form. So you can put name, address, suburb, that kind of stuff. What job are you looking for? All just so they never leave Facebook. But then you put some filtering questions to kind of go, which are linked to your target market. So things that that are of value to your target market and are of value to you as a business, right?
Yep.
So that you must do that. If you just run a Facebook ad and to a phone number, you're asking for a lot of heartache and a lot of headache, because you'll get people
Yes.
ring you. You know, I know of lots of people who've done that, and or get people and they go and quote. Like, how much does it cost to go and quote someone physically, like on an hourly rate?
Insanely expensive. Insanely expensive.
Right. And I
So
remember you used to doing that. Like, you would just go off, you know, and you got to a point very quickly where you went, oh, we're even from a Google ad, I know we're paying that, but we are not going to just run off and physically go and spend 40 minutes quoting, and the quote might cost you $80 or $90 just to give the quote.
yeah, and that's the thing that we were doing with. So when we say that we were winning 1 out of 3 regular clients at the time, we were doing this. The reason why we did that is because, as I said at the start of the podcast, we were trying to grow rapidly because of my health condition, right?
Right.
And it worked, right? But we were also taking once-off jobs. So I think from memory, the cost in advertising per job was about $42 for all jobs. And I thought that was pretty good, right? The problem is when you go out to actually do the quote, yes, it does actually cost about $80, maybe a little bit more. And then you have the administration time as well that people don't factor into. And what we worked out was it was about $140 that we would have to do as a minimum job to break even on a once-off job. And what we were doing at the time, which was dumb, is, we don't do it anymore, which is why it shows you how dumb it was. We got all these jobs that were tiny little lawn mowing jobs, and they might have been overgrown, and it might be like, it's a monthly job, or it's like, we only need it done when, we call, and we were still sort of taking on those jobs because we're like, we're just down the street, who cares, we'll just do it. And so we were paying money for the thing, we'd go out to quote them, they'd accept it, and it'd be like $100 job. And so you take into the cost of the next job too. So let's say you're making a 10% profit margin off the mowing job once you've paid your employees and everything. It's just nice round numbers, $100, 10% profit margin. So you're making $10 each time you do the job. Well, your first job needs to be $140 to break even. So you're $40 behind, right? And this semi-regular job that you're doing for $100, well, you're only making $10 each time. So you have to do another 4 cuts just to break even on your original quote cost. And so that's one of the reasons why your marketing strategy, this is the mistake we made. Not, you have, like you said, you have to experiment with this, because you may find out, people listening to this, that you go do exactly the same thing, and maybe people in your market are a bit different, or maybe hearing this, you realize that you don't do those jobs at the same hourly rate that you do every other one. You might raise your hourly rate to compensate for this issue. Mm-hmm. But you can find that there's ways of doing marketing that the cost of actually just going out and doing the job is insane. And so when you guys hear about how we do our filtering and how we talk to our clients, you think, oh, that's a bit strict. Now you realize why. Because if we were to send everybody out to all of our requests and really bend backwards for them, it might cost us. I don't even want to think about what it would cost us, but it would be insane.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got your Google ads, which is more your instant people looking for work. There's good and bad with that. We know what the costs are. Then you go to Facebook. The costs are a little bit less, but it takes more time to get a client. And it's not as scalable. I think if you were to really work on it for a long time, you could really master it. But Google Ads is like, you can literally turn it on, turn it off, increase your budget. It's much more scalable. And the final one is flyer drops. Is that something that you would recommend these days, Darren, considering the way that marketing's changed?
Only in the sense of it's. I mean, look, there's lots of companies that are doing flyer drops, so you're kind of in with all of those. But just in terms of, it can play a part in your marketing strategy because it's a physical thing. It's not online. So We talk a lot about online. We do a lot of online. The good thing about online is it's all measurable, trackable. Every click, every dollar spent is trackable. The problem with flyers is it's not. I mean, you can have phone numbers and that kind of stuff, but that are particularly linked to those flyers. There's the physical cost of delivering a flyer, so not just the printing cost. The only thing about that is you can make it very targeted. So we know we're already in these streets, so we will flyer drop those streets. So it's going back to when you want to scale, and if you do three jobs in the same street, then that pushes your hourly rate up because your travel time is like 30 seconds or 1 minute. And so that really can be a factor. So that's probably the core benefit of flyer dropping in the areas you're already in. But again, it's hard to measure. People get a lot of flyers. You need an offer that's going to catch people.
Yes.
For me, to get a flyer to work, you need to know your lifetime value of for every client that we have from the last year. If we get a new one, they will stay with us for 12 months or 24 months, whatever. So that's, if you then run an offer, and I don't mean a discount. I don't believe in discounting. I believe in value adding. So adding say you want to add an extra service. We'll do a fertilizer or a weed spray, whatever, with your first service or something like that. You need some sort of hook to take them, not just say, "Hi, we're Joe Blogs and Lawn Mowing." It doesn't work at that level.
And that's what a lot of people do with the flyer drops and with their marketing. They don't have any sort of hook. When you're on Google, you don't need the hook so much because they're already looking for you, right? Facebook and Facebook flyer drops, billboards, radio ads, TV ads, they interrupt the person. So if you've already got a service that's good enough, right, you have to offer something. And so, a lot of people, they would hear discount, and you're saying no discount. So a way that you could do it would be something like, so the way Silverstone Gardening would do it is, we only do high-end lawn care packages. Look at our before and after photos. Okay, that immediately, big problem. Not many people are interested. So being a flyer drop out to thousands and thousands of people, not many will be interested. However, there will be some people who have lawn mowing businesses that they're sick of because they're unreliable, they don't do high quality, and they go, "Oh, that hook, that's caught me." If I just sent out Silverstone Gardening and basically send a message saying, "We exist, why not use us?" They're going to go, "Why should we use you?" Throw it in the bin. Right. You need to have something there. There's a couple of major problems with flyer drops, which it doesn't mean they don't work, but they can end up being really quite expensive. The first is they are quite expensive to put in to start with, either with time or with paying a service. If you pay a service to do it, it might look cheap, but they're bundling it with a bunch of other ones, which is what you were mentioning before. And people might not even look at your flyer because it's bundled with 5 others, and they go, "Oh, junk mail, throw it in the bin." So and then the results can be hindered by that. If you go and do it yourself, you're much more likely that they're going to see it. But the problem with that is it just takes so long. Look, if you're really quiet right now, this could be a great option for you. If you have no money, it's not expensive to print flyers. So that's that. But the problem with flyers is if you are interrupting somebody and you don't have your offer down, you often just get the lower quality clients who have the overgrown lawn. They're so disorganized, they're not even bothered to Google yet. They see your ad and go, "Oh yeah, I'll use them." And they call them up. And so a lot of people think that, if I drop the flyers in the higher quality areas, I will get higher quality clients. Now that can happen, like, don't get me wrong, but you often just get the overgrown lawns in the higher quality areas. And so I think on its own, it's not enough. On its own, it's sort of, you're interrupting people, so you have to have them at a time where they're really looking for a lawn mowing business. Most people, if they have a lawn mowing business that's good enough, they're not gonna go for you unless you have an amazing offer, right? And then even if they do go for you, the ones that do might probably just be the disorganized ones. So it's just, it's not saying that you shouldn't use it. It's just know those things before you get into it, because you may find that you can make it work and you don't mind doing those cleanup jobs right now because you really need the work. But I think those are the three main ways that people are paying for direct advertising and how they're getting from there.
Yeah. And just two last points on that. If you're going to do flyer drops or anything, you have to do it for a number of months, consistency, because once people don't even notice you, twice they might start to take notice. You might be 3, 4, 5 months. And that's the other thing, just with Facebook advertising, there's a branding awareness thing that you get just from your ads being out there consistently. It if you're totally invisible to your market right now, it can be a good way just to build a general awareness as well as getting specific leads.
Yeah. Let's. I'm going to talk very briefly on SEO. I think this is quite a heady subject. And so what we're talking about, and we've been going for about an hour and a half now. So I'll talk briefly about SEO because this is actually the strategy that we use the most now. Very briefly, SEO is organic search. When you go on Google, you find someone organically. If you were to Google Silverstone Garden, not actually Silverstone Gardening, but say you say lawn mowing in the areas that Silverstone Gardening works, aeration, vertimowing, rose pruning, mulching. I worked a lot, hundreds and hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours over many years to have this work. So we now rank in the top 3. I could look this up if I wanted to, I don't have the time. But last time I looked up, there was about 80 pages from the Silverstone Gardening website that rank in the top 3 for certain search results. And some of it's even for advice. Like if you Google something like lawn aerator Bunnings, let me do that because I have an article. Lawn aerator Bunnings. Where are we? Oh, we're in the top 10 on that page. Or if you type best lawn aerator Bunnings, because we got an article that talks about those sorts of things. We even come up for those sorts of results. People send me messages. Tell me where you found us, because it'll be interesting to see where we are across the world or across the country. So the way that we've worked with our SEO is right now. So this will blow some of your minds, but we don't spend any money on advertising because it all comes organically through the channels of word of mouth, mainly through SEO and through a few other places, like just people being aware of our social media. Now, we're very well established, but we would get, I would say, $500,000 to $1 million worth of requests every year from zero ad spend. However, I have been working on my website since 2013. And so it is a very powerful, you hear those numbers and you're like, man, that's crazy good. You spend no money and you literally get that much. And we're talking about requests because, like you've heard, we don't take them all on. But if we wanted to take them all on, it might be more than 1 million, right? But the amount of that we're rejecting is huge. It's thousands of people every year. So what we're getting at is it's a great strategy, a fantastic strategy. It's the one I use. For you to have the time to do it or to be able to pay somebody else to do it, it's so expensive in the short term. And you're not going to get results for a long time. And so that's just the reality of it. Mm-hmm. But what I did is basically for, I don't know, almost every year in winter when I was quiet, I'd work on my SEO. And so I don't know how many pages that we have on the website. I could look it up. I'll look it up now while we're talking about this. But on our website, we might have 300 different pages on the websites. So articles, different landing pages that people jump on. And so, look, there's just the real world. I mean, yeah, in the real world, it's just so tough to do that. Is there anything else you want to add on SEO?
Yeah, no, look, you've done that and used that really well. But if you wanted to price that and you put your hourly rate on that, you will work out your SEO strategy has cost you tens of thousands of dollars, but it would do if you employed a company. Again, I've worked with a lot of businesses, they get a third party. The thing I would say about that is because you know the business best and you're the type of person who loves to do advice type articles, and because you're knowledgeable in the industry, you find that easy to put out. If you get a third party doing your SEO for you, they often lack an authentic thing. They will charge you a lot of money, and you need to know what results am I getting. You can measure your results, Luke, but I've seen many companies who pay out quite a lot of money and get, well, we got you 2 extra links, or we got you in the top 30 of Google. Well, that doesn't mean anything. How many leads did I get because of that article is the kind of key metric I'd say you need to look at.
And it's one of those things where it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg again. What freed me up to do this sort of stuff was charging the right hourly rate. Right. And so it is really difficult if you're starting at $60 an hour to go, I don't have the what's the word? I don't have the time because I need to make my money. I don't have the time to spend. Like, let's give you some examples. So I've got the numbers in front of me. We have 57 articles that I've written over the years. They would average over 1,000 words each. So it'd be 60,000 words at least. Some of my articles are 3,500 words, right? And a lot of them rank really well. And then the actual pages, and these are current. There are some that I've deleted. There's probably about 10 over the years where I wrote one back in like maybe 2015 and I read it again. I was like, oh, whoever wrote that was an idiot, because you mature and grow. I'll just delete that one, thanks, and rewrite a new one. So that's how many posts and how many pages. We have 146 active pages. So that would be like lawn mowing services, this suburb, lawn mowing services, that suburb. There's probably 70 of those. And we deleted a bunch of those when we redefined the types of services that we do. We narrowed down our service range, and I mean probably 100. So this is not in one hit, but what I'm saying is that is 300 or so pages. We currently have more than 200 active on the website right now. So there's huge work. And I and my wife wrote all of it. Carrie probably did 20% of it. Like, I did 80% of it. So it is chicken or the egg, the amount of work. If I look at Google Analytics to give you guys some really cool numbers, we have about 1,000 people a week go on our website organically, no traffic. That's pretty consistent. Yeah, the last 30 days, close to 4.2 thousand people, and 87% of them are from Australia. So that gives you huge brand recognition, but just insanely long amounts of time and years and years and years to get those sorts of results. So look, if you're someone who's looking for the long term, go for it. Challenge us, write more articles than I've done, put more work in than I've done. But the alternative is what we were doing a couple of years ago. We're probably getting the same results, I guess, from the Google ads that we get now with SEO, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and the numbers in terms of leads you're getting through every week was very similar. And again, you were just putting your money into that as opposed to putting your time, which is still money, into doing that. So, but the thing about the SEO strategy is one page that gets ranked keeps going for sort of ever. And so it's money invested once that then pays out over the long run, as opposed to ads, which you have to keep putting money in over and over again.
Yeah. And the other thing as well that we should touch on is that you can write an article and it never ranks. No one ever sees it. Sure. And I would say there's probably 10. Like, I'm looking right now, there's an article called Everything You Need to Know About Lily Pilly. 140 people have read that this week. Another article called The 3 Worst Lawn Aeration from Bunnings. We already talked about that one. There's 100 people have read that this week. There's a bunch of things like that but there's heaps of articles I've written that went nowhere and no one's ever read them. And it is quite disheartening. You might do that for 6 months and nothing happens. That's pretty much what happened to me. Years of not getting many results. So you just got to be realistic with that. But like I say, when you get it right, if we took on all of our jobs that we get from it, I would say, now I'm really thinking about it, you talk about lifetime value of the client, well over $1 million now, probably $1 million towards $1 million for a single year. But yeah, you get the idea. So Darren, let's talk about one more thing, which is organic social media. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, we've talked about so many different things. Do you see that as something worth building? I mean, I guess it is worth building, but compared to these other things, where do you rank it?
It's a long-term strategy again. I put it very much, when I say long-term, in the sense of, building up the number of people following you. Just because you put a post out, like say you have 500 followers, 500 people are not seeing that post. Facebook a long time ago restricted that to like 5% of your market. And so you now have to boost those posts to go to a wider audience. So your organic Facebook, really, you need to boost it to get proper reach. So, but it works in with an SEO strategy. It works in because Google look at that and they look at links. But the thing is, you can have links to articles coming back to your website, so that helps. It all works as an ecosystem together, which is why we keep talking about a strategy, a complete strategy. Yes. So it's like, again, I know clients who are getting a lot of their work straight off Facebook. And maybe because in their area, Facebook is ranking because no one else is really doing a lot in that area. Again, you need to check out your suburbs, who's competing with you, because it's all relative to who you're competing with. So, there are definitely businesses who from social media, just social posts, can build a business. Again, I'll talk about that business in the in Ireland, that the roof cleaning business. They get huge amounts. I mean, we're running a Facebook campaign where they're getting, a lot of their quote leads from. They're getting huge organic social value as well, because paid Facebook and organic work together in the algorithm. It boosts both. So it's another string to your bow, really.
Well, the way that I think the way that most people should be using organic social media is not how to get new jobs. And this is exactly how we use it now. We use it to convince people who are getting quotes that our work is high quality.
Right.
And so what you can do, there's a plenty of guys out there. Like, for example, we got Craig from Southern Cross last week. Amazing hedging work, right? Just off the charts. The previous podcast to this. Somebody might call him, find him on Google, let's say, and they just don't even click on the photos, call the number, and he rocks up. And they might be suspicious of him and how he does his business. And he shows them his Facebook, sold. Like the quality of work. That's what it is really powerful at. And you don't need many followers for that. You can post really good stuff. So let's say you really love doing hedge reductions and just cutting them down. And that's something that you make really good money from. Post a few time lapses of you doing that sort of work. Next time you go and quote the job, let's say the client isn't even home and you're just quoting it, right? Super powerful tool is to write the quote and then link on your email a video of you doing a similar job. In fact, that client, so on our, if you look at Silverstone Gardening's Instagram, there's actually a video of Darren's back lawn, right? That we did a 9-week transformation. It's probably about 5 or 6 videos down. It's a very short video with it's very simple voiceover where it shows this transformation sliding across the screen between where it started and where we got it after 9 weeks. I show that all the time to clients, all the time to people, and I say, this is what our silver lawn care package does. And so if you're interested in those sorts of results, there you go. Mm-hmm. And that has been worth, I think that's probably close to 4 or 5 people in the last couple of months who are getting that level of service. And so I see organic social media as a way of convincing people who have found you elsewhere, or maybe through your paid social media, that you do high quality stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we've missed there that's glaringly obvious that we should be talking about before we wrap up the podcast?
Just to say, the measuring and testing is, I know we've touched on it a little bit, but measuring what you do, because you can't argue with real data. And it also means that you don't need to make the same mistakes over and over again. But I think a lot of people start out and go, I tried Google for a month, I tried Facebook for a month, and you hear them and you see posts, it didn't work for me. And that goes back to something you said earlier, Luke, about people wanting excuses as to why they don't want to change or grow or blame something else. But these are tools that you need to know how to use, and you need to use consistently over a long period of time, and it will change your business. But you need to measure everything and go, well, that didn't work. Let me change that, and then see different results. Like you did with your SEO, with many of the different strategies. We've tried lots of different Google ads over the times. You've tried different web pages. You're now using video on your web pages, which again, there's another level of social proof. That's convincing people. But again, there's a lot of work and money involved in getting that. But I would just say test everything, measure everything, and then build on the top of that over a period of time.
I guess today what we're talking about is the goal is to get to $100 an hour. If you look at Silverstone Gardening and how we do our marketing, like we didn't need to do everything to the level that we're doing it now to get $100 an hour. No. So don't look at what we're doing and feel like that's what's limiting you. But hopefully it's giving you a guide and a bit of a path to walk where okay, this can be done. Because maybe you've noticed the way you've set up, the way you've worded yourself, how you've conducted yourself, maybe hurting. Maybe you've realized that you keep getting knocked down because people tell you you're too expensive, but you haven't realized that that's just their negotiating tactic. Maybe you haven't communicated those 1%ers. Maybe you tried Google Ads and you didn't realize that those results were possible, so you gave up before tweaking. Like Darren said, maybe you didn't realize there was experimenting involved. And so I hope that this is giving you a good idea to start with. You don't have to have everything working out perfectly to get $100 an hour at all. But if you start with these things, I think you'll get there. Look, Darren, where can people find you?
Yeah, and they can jump on my website at strategicgrowth.pro. And on there, I've just got a free download. It's about pricing and strategy and how to use that. So jump on my website.
strategicgrowth.pro. If you look at his little Pricing with Confidence book, there's a photo of a cylinder mower on the front for all of you enthusiasts out there. And that may be a Silverstone gardening photo. You never know.
Well, we won't say. We won't say. It could well be.
No, it could be. But you know what? It's a good photo. All right. Thanks so much, Darren. Look, guys, if you have liked this episode, reach out. You might have some questions that you want to ask, because we will get Darren on again sometime in the future, and we can dig a bit deeper. So if you have questions, reach out. Don't send them to me personally. Send them to the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast Instagram or Facebook page. Much easier for me to find them when the time comes. So send them to that, and I'll see you guys in the next podcast.